Hello and welcome back, Squirrel Nation. Today we're doing our first collaboration video with PVL, the Premier Valor League. This is going to be an ongoing series, and in the series, PVL viewers are going to vote on the game that they most want to be reviewed each week, and then I will do a review of that series. The breakdown for this series, like the formatting of the video, will be a quick overview of the match and the players, followed by covering the draft and ban phase of each game. And then finally, I'll close each of these videos by discussing a lesson learned or some sort of like takeaway that I think could help one of the teams, one or both of the teams. And anyways, having said that, let's dive into today's quick overview on the match. The Infamous definitely has a skill lead on the players. They have 2 diamonds, whereas NTG has 1 diamond player and actually has 1 gold player. So there is kind of that skill gap, which you do see play out in this series. But at the same time, it lets us kind of go for interesting lessons that can help both the teams. So anyways, having said that, let's look at Game 1 draft band, which we are currently looking at. This is the result. The way that I would quickly analyze this is I'm looking at the side lanes and I want to see who's going to win. So if you look at NTG, we were looking at Scud, Marja as the side laners, and if you look at Infamous, we are looking at Zuka and most likely Aram. So if you look at those, Marja is going to win lane against Zuka or Aram. And then Scud is likely going to at least tie lane, if not win. Scud most likely should be the Darkslayer lane. Marja should be the Abysmal lane because she can provide more team fighting over the first dragon. Same thing, I would assume Aram is going to match against Marja, and then I would assume that Scud and Zuka will go against each other. So I give the nod to NTG in terms of the side lanes. If you look mid, Liliana, L'Oreal, both of them get stronger as the game goes on, very late game strength. Liliana is going to have faster wave clear and better mobility, so I will give slight edge to Infamous. Jungler, Lindis, Slims late game more powerful, Lindis early game more powerful, falls off. I consider that neutral. And then between the supports, the Chognar versus the Net, I would definitely go with a Net as a better support. One concern about in this game having a Net is that NTG has a lot of range damage, so Marja and Slims and L'Oreal. So I'm not sure how effective a Net's ult will be, but at the same time, NTG definitely has heroes that if they get out of position, so if a Net uses her ultimate to push them out of position, they can get punished heavily because Infamous has a lot of punishing heroes. Like Zuka can do major burst, Liliana can do major burst, Aram can obviously ult on somebody. So this should be interesting. Anyways, that will be game 1's. Here's the end game screen after game 1. This was actually a very close game. NTG actually had the advantage throughout the majority of the game, and they could have won, but there was one major team fight that they ended up losing. Infamous made the good call of getting Darkslayer and then pushing high ground towers, and the game just kind of snowballed from there. MVPs definitely in this game were on NTG side, were the Slims and the Marja. They were just doing outstanding. They were doing everything you would want. Slims was just cleaning up kills. I think at one point he was 5-0. And anyways, the thing that actually turned the game was some outstanding play by a Net. Lust on a Net just had some amazing ults. Kept splitting NTG so that her team could just clean up the kills and then they would just push it on. Just outstanding, honestly. Without the Net play, I'm almost positive that Infamous would have lost this game. And as you noticed, Lust has 18 assists. Amazing. Just did great. But another key note on this game, as we discussed, the skill gap, to be fair, is Infamous just got picked on, right? He's the gold player, the only one in this game, and Infamous just picked on him. If you notice, he has 7 deaths. They just early and often were ganking his lane and just putting pressure there. And then from there on, it was just hard for NTG to cover down because they were just so consistently losing that one lane. But they still made a really, really good effort. And the game one was a quite fun game to watch. They definitely could have had it if it was not for that one unfortunate fight. On to the second draft ban phase. So this is for game 2. So basically, same thing. Let's go lane by lane. We look Omen, Malik, definitely good side laners. The Max became a very weird pick, I would say. Max ends up being the support in this game. I really think that the Max pick just cost them the game. One problem is if you have 5 heroes who all need farm, okay, they all need farm to be effective, then they're all going to be weak because they're all splitting the farm that 4 people on the other team are going to be sharing, right? Because normally the support's going to build support item. They're not a hero who needs a lot of gold to be effective, so they're just going to outscale the enemy team, and then their damage, their carries are going to end up just doing way too much damage compared to the other teams. So anyways, I think NTG in this game, they're red this time, made a very big mistake in picking Max. But anyways, if we look at the side lanes, Omen, great side laner, but he's going to get beat by Roxy flat out. And then Crest is the other side laner for Infamous. And Crest and Malik should win, but notably, we talked about the skill gap. Infamous is the gold player on NTG, and I'm not saying that to try to pick on him or anything, but he is the lower skilled player in this game. So, Infamous does take advantage of this throughout both games. In both games, they heavily pick on Infamous lane, and that is kind of a theme throughout it. But anyways, theoretically, Malik should beat Crest in lane because, yeah, he just does much better, and Omen should lose to Roxy, so that's a split. Then we look at the jungle, same thing, Lindis versus Slims again. I'll say that's even. And then you look at the mids, Raz versus Trixie. This one, I lean towards Raz, assuming equal skill level, because he can assassinate, and he can make it very hard for Trixie to roam, because when Trixie needs to leave mid lane, if Raz is hiding in the bushes or just in the path, then Trixie is going to have a very tough time doing that. And the way for mids to safely roam is to have really good supports who are clearing the path and giving them vision, but the problem is you have a Max as your support, and it's just not going to be there. And then finally, we have supports. We have the Aram versus the Max. Aram is obviously, I give the nod to in this regard. So overall in this comp-wise, I do lean towards Infamous, the blue team in this case, to have the advantage in this game. Here we have the results after game 2. The main point I'm going to make out of this: Infamous obviously just crushed this game from the beginning on. There was really never a chance for NTG to take this game. But the main point that I want to make is you should not be supporting on a hero when you are going to have 1 assist and 3 kills. So Max in this game, we talked about already. They decided to have a Max support. Max ends up with the highest kills on their team and only 1 assist. So that just kind of should show you that that is not an optimal support hero, because its playstyle, Max's playstyle, just is not support oriented, right? Now, on the other hand, if you look over at Aram, 14 assists. She has double the assists of anybody else on her team. She only took 1 kill away. Like, that's what you want to see out of a support. And another thing, if you notice, even though there's a huge gold disparity, Max actually has slightly more gold than Aram, right? Or sorry, slightly less gold, about 500 less gold than Aram. But if you look at every other team member, they're about 2,000 to 1,000 ahead of their laning opponents. So anyways, when you're drafting, whether it's for a team comp or solo queue, be really careful about what you're selecting and how gold dependent they are. You never want a team where all 5 heroes require gold to carry or do well, because if you do that, you all are going to end up significantly underfarmed. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the lesson learned, or the key takeaway out of this series. I think the key takeaway out of this series is how to set up in the early game to handle enemy invades, how to counter invade, that type of thing. The reason this is important is because NTG lost both early games. They had their buffs invaded and stolen, and they did not get the enemies, and they also even gave up kills. So I'm going to just go over the things that I think that NTG can do to prevent this in the future. So one thing, if you notice, is Max over here is the support and Winter is the mid, okay? Both of them are hanging back behind the minion waves, right? And the problem with this is that they are providing no intelligence, no vision for their team. So if you look at the top left hand, the minimap, Omen is set up and he is watching the buff like you would in solo queue, right? And the problem with this is that by the time NTG knows that an invade is coming, it's too late for them to react. So in the future, what I would like is whoever is support, in this case Max should come and take bush control, right? He should at a minimum be in this bush control, but more likely you want to fight over these mid lane bushes. So I would love if Trixie and Max would have come up and taken this mid lane bush, because even if Raz and Aram go there, they're still going to have a fight over that bush, right? And if they're fighting over and they're kind of losing health and whatnot, then they are not going to be able to invade that buff. But anyways, if you notice what happens, and note on the other side, Crest is also actually doing the same thing as Omen, and their team could have the same invade because they're not watching bush. But if you notice, what happened is Raz, and sorry, I got the names mixed up, Roxy was set up in the other mid lane bush, but Raz took the other side, like I was talking about. So if Trixie would have done the same thing, she would have spotted Roxy and Aram going to invade NTG's buff. But Raz, say that NTG tries to invade Infamous's blue buff, or their red buff, then Raz is going to spot that, and they're going to be able to react. So here, the reason that NTG loses the early game in both games in this series is because of lack of vision and lack of intel, which makes them react slowly. So now let's keep going into this. Okay, so we have 3, bam, Omen sees them now, okay? So what are they doing? So now let's pause and look at the map. So 3 people are stealing your red buff as NTG. We're speaking from red team's point of view. So you see 3 enemies stealing your red buff, okay? Well, the 3 of you are taking your blue buff, okay? So what are your options? Well, what you either need to do is you either need to come and collapse on them, which is not optimal, or at this point, you're just going to have to kill your blue buff and then try to go get their red buff, right? Because if you let the enemy team have 3 of the 4 starting buffs, your jungler is going to be significantly behind, okay? So that is the worst option. It's also, at this point, it's already kind of, you're in a bad spot because you failed to get intelligence. Like, if you notice, Trixie's just sitting in front of her tower. She still hasn't gained any vision. Raz is still watching that path to see if NTG tries to counter invade. So it already kind of lost, so now you're making the best choice out of bad choices. So to me personally, I wish NTG would have went for the red. And if you notice, what Kresh is doing is perfect. He kites the red, so he leashed it. He hit it once, it's going to follow him, which is going to cause it to reset. So say NTG would have invaded right then, that would have just stalled them for about 10 seconds. It would have taken longer. And now, like we said, okay, they got their blue, and now they decide to go for red. Well, the problem is they already lost their red. Lindis, okay, let's pause. Lindis is already doing her blue. They already secured red up here, right? And now what that means is that the blue team, Infamous, can collapse in on NTG when they try to take this buff. NTG, thankfully, this game recognizes that and just gives up on getting the buffs, which is good. But once again, you're putting yourself in a very, very bad spot if you lose these early game engages. And I want to hit home, this is a simple point, but a very important point. They lost their buffs, they lost the early game because their support and their mid laner failed to gain vision to help them make better decisions. So anyways, that is the main point I think that came out of both of these series is, and to be, once again, just hit it home, if you are the mid laner or you are the support, you need to gain advanced vision. Advanced vision being the mid lane bushes, or being bushes in the river. Gain vision of the river, okay? Ideally, you want to gain vision on both sides of the river. Like we saw, Infamous gain vision on with Aram and Roxy on one side of the river, and they gained vision on the other side of the river with Raz. Whereas NTG just simply sat behind their mid tower with both their support and their mid. So this concludes the first iteration of coaching for PVL. Please let me know what you think in the comments. It's kind of hard to break down almost 50-minute series into a 15-minute video, so I went with certain clips and a certain style to try to make it into a 15-minute video. So anyways, please let me know what you think in the comments so that I can make adjustments in the coming weeks. But anyways, I hope you all enjoyed what we covered, and if you did, please like and subscribe so that you don't miss any future videos. Anyways, take care and happy ranking.